Imagine a world without letters, a world where written words don't exist, where all stories, laws, and knowledge lived only in human memory. This was reality for thousands of years, until a small Mediterranean civilization changed everything. They created the alphabet. But how did this happen? And why is this invention considered one of humanity's greatest contributions? Around 1,200 years before Christ, in the region we now know as Lebanon, the Phoenician civilization emerged. These master sailors and traders faced a crucial challenge in their daily lives. As they sailed across the Mediterranean, establishing trade routes and founding new colonies, they desperately needed an efficient way to record their transactions and communicate during their voyages. Picture a Phoenician merchant trying to keep track of hundreds of trades using the complex writing systems of the time, like Egyptian hieroglyphs with their thousands of symbols, or Mesopotamian cuneiform with its intricate wedge-shaped marks. It was simply impractical. They needed something simpler, something revolutionary, and that's exactly what they created, a phonetic alphabet with just 22 characters. Each symbol represented a specific sound, making it incredibly easy to learn and use. This brilliant system was so practical that it spread like wildfire across the ancient world. The Greeks adopted and modified it, adding vowels. The Romans then adapted the Greek alphabet, creating Latin letters. And from there it evolved into the Western alphabet we use today. Think about it. Every message you've ever written, every book you've ever read, every sign you've ever seen, all of this traces back to those ancient Phoenician traders who dared to simplify writing. Their invention didn't just change their world, it shaped our entire civilization. If you love history and want to uncover more mysteries of the great empires, like this video, subscribe to Legacy of Empires and don't miss a single episode. Join us as we explore the fascinating stories that shaped our world, one civilization at a time. Before the Phoenicians revolutionized writing, the ancient world was dominated by incredibly complex writing systems. The Egyptian hieroglyphs, for instance, used over 3,000 intricate symbols. Each character was a work of art in itself, depicting birds, animals, and everyday objects. Meanwhile, in Mesopotamia, scribes spent years mastering cuneiform writing, carefully pressing wedge-shaped marks into clay tablets. These ancient writing systems were like exclusive clubs. Only a select few could join. Imagine spending 15 to 20 years of your life just learning how to write. That's exactly what scribes had to do. They were the elite of their time, powerful because they alone could read and write. Temple priests, royal officials, and professional scribes held a monopoly on written knowledge, but the Phoenicians were merchants at heart. Their lives revolved around trade, negotiations, and keeping records of their transactions. They couldn't afford to spend decades learning how to write, nor could they rely on professional scribes for their daily business needs. They needed something practical, something that any trader could learn quickly and use effectively. Here's a fascinating detail about those ancient times. Merchants would often travel with their sons, teaching them the family trade from a young age. Can you imagine trying to teach a young apprentice thousands of hieroglyphs while sailing across the Mediterranean? The Phoenicians certainly couldn't. They needed a system so simple that even a child could learn it. And here's an interesting fact that connects our present to this ancient past. The very word alphabet that we use today tells its own story. It comes from the first two letters of the Greek alphabet, alpha and beta. But these weren't original Greek inventions. They were adapted from the Phoenician letters aleph, which meant ox, and beth, which meant house. When you say alphabet today, you're actually speaking a word that echoes through thousands of years of history, back to those innovative Phoenician traders. The Phoenicians looked at the elaborate writing systems around them and dared to ask, what if we could make this simpler? What if we could create a system that anyone could learn? this practical need, this desire for simplicity and accessibility would lead to one of the most important innovations in human history, the phonetic alphabet. The creation of the Phoenician alphabet wasn't just a stroke of genius. It was a revolution born from necessity and shaped by centuries of cultural exchange. Think of it as the world's first truly viral innovation, spreading across the ancient world faster than any invention before it. The Phoenicians took a radical approach. Instead of creating symbols for entire words or concepts, they broke down their spoken language into its most basic sounds. They came up with just 22 symbols, each representing a single consonant sound. This might seem obvious to us today, but back then, it was revolutionary thinking. Let me paint you a picture of how groundbreaking this was. Imagine you're a Phoenician merchant in an ancient port. Before the alphabet, writing down a simple trade deal might require knowing hundreds of different symbols. But with the new system, you could write anything using just 22 characters. It was like going from a library of thousands of books to a simple set of building blocks that could create any word imaginable. But here's something fascinating about the Phoenician alphabet. Each symbol wasn't created randomly. The shapes of their letters often came from Egyptian hieroglyphs, simplified and streamlined for quick writing. For example, their letter Aleph started as a picture of an ox's head, but over time it was simplified until it became more like our letter A. The letter Mem, which eventually became our M, began as a drawing of waves representing water. The brilliance of the Phoenician system wasn't just in its simplicity, it was in its flexibility. Because each symbol represented a sound rather than a meaning, the alphabet could be adapted to write any language. It was like creating a universal code that could be customized for any spoken tongue. The system spread rapidly throughout the ancient world, carried along trade routes by merchants who could demonstrate its practical value in real time. Imagine the scene. A Phoenician trader showing a Greek merchant how to write an entire contract using just these 22 symbols. It must have seemed like magic. What makes this story even more remarkable is that the Phoenicians never intended to create something so revolutionary. They weren't trying to change the world. They were just trying to make their daily business easier. Yet in solving their own practical problems, they created a system that would fundamentally change how humans communicate forever. The spread of the Phoenician alphabet across the ancient world is one of history's most fascinating tales of cultural diffusion. Picture this. Phoenician ships sailing across the Mediterranean, carrying not just precious cargo in their holds, but something far more valuable, a revolutionary way of writing. As these master traders established their network of ports and colonies, they brought their alphabet with them. From modern-day Lebanon to Spain, from North Africa to Greece, their simple writing system began to catch on. It was like an ancient version of a viral trend, spreading from port to port, city to city. The Greeks were among the first to recognize the genius of this system. But they didn't just copy it, they made it even better. Around 800 years before Christ, they made a crucial innovation. They added vowels. The Greek traders and scholars realized that by adding symbols for A, E, I, O, and U, they could represent their language even more accurately. This was like adding color to a black and white drawing. Suddenly, the written word could capture every nuance of spoken language. Then came the Romans. They encountered the Greek alphabet through their interactions with Greek colonies in southern Italy. They saw its potential and adapted it for their own language, creating what we now call the Latin alphabet. They refined the letter shapes, making them more geometric and easier to carve into stone. Many of these are the same letters you're reading right now. Think about that for a moment. Every time you write a message on your phone, every time you read a book, you're using a system that evolved from those ancient Phoenician traders. Their alphabet traveled across time and space, transforming from simple trading records into the foundation of Western literature, science, and communication. It's remarkable to think that this journey began with merchants simply trying to keep track of their olive oil and purple dye trades. They couldn't have imagined that their practical solution would one day be used to write everything from Shakespeare's plays to today's social media posts. Did you know that the Phoenician alphabet was the inspiration for not just our alphabet, but also many others? It influenced the development of Hebrew, Arabic, and even some Indian writing systems. It truly was the mother of all modern alphabets. If you're enjoying this incredible journey through history, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Legacy of Empires for more fascinating stories about the ancient world. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think was the Phoenicians' greatest legacy? Their alphabet, their trading empire, or perhaps their famous purple dye? Share your thoughts in the comments below. While the alphabet might be the Phoenicians' most famous legacy, their influence on human civilization goes far beyond these 22 letters. These extraordinary people were the masters of the ancient Mediterranean, and their achievements would make even modern entrepreneurs envious. First, let's talk about their incredible maritime skills. The Phoenicians were the ancient world's greatest sailors, venturing further than any civilization before them. They were the first to navigate by the North Star, making nighttime sailing possible. Think about that. While others hugged the coastline during daylight hours, Phoenician ships confidently sailed through the night, guided by the stars. These intrepid explorers didn't just stay in the Mediterranean. They dared to pass through the Strait of Gibraltar, which many ancient peoples believed was the edge of the world. They sailed up the Atlantic coast of Africa and Europe, possibly reaching as far as Britain in search of tin. There are even controversial accounts suggesting they might have circumnavigated Africa 2,000 years before European explorers. The Phoenicians were also master city builders. Their most famous colony, Carthage, grew to become one of the most powerful cities in the ancient world. Located in modern-day Tunisia, Carthage was a marvel of urban planning, with a sophisticated harbor system that could shelter hundreds of ships. The city became so powerful that it later challenged Rome itself for control of the Mediterranean. But perhaps their most colorful legacy, quite literally, was their famous purple dye. Known as Tyrian purple, this prestigious color was worth its weight in gold. The dye came from tiny sea snails, and it took thousands of these creatures to produce just 1 ounce of the precious liquid. This purple became the color of royalty throughout the ancient world, and that association with power and privilege continues even today. The Phoenicians were also innovative shipbuilders. They developed the keel, which made their ships more stable and capable of carrying heavier loads. Their lightweight, fast vessels called galleys became the standard design for Mediterranean ships for centuries to come. Their trading network was equally impressive. Phoenician merchants traded everything from cedar wood to glass, from precious metals to exotic spices. They were the first true commercial empire, creating a vast network of trade routes that connected different cultures and civilizations. In many ways, they were the pioneers of globalization, 3,000 years before the term was invented. The Phoenicians even influenced ancient cuisine and agriculture. They were experts in wine production and introduced new farming techniques to their colonies. Many of the olive trees still growing in Spain and North Africa are descendants of Phoenician cultivars. So while we rightfully celebrate their alphabet, let's remember that the Phoenicians were much more than clever writers. They were explorers, innovators, city founders, and master traders who helped shape the ancient world in countless ways. Their legacy lives on not just in our writing, but in our cities, our trade routes, our navigation methods, and even in the purple clothes worn by the wealthy and powerful. Even the mightiest civilizations must face their twilight, and the Phoenicians were no exception. Their story of decline is a bittersweet tale of how a civilization can fade away, while its greatest invention lives on to shape the future of humanity. The beginning of the end came when the mighty Assyrian Empire turned its gaze toward the wealthy Phoenician cities. Around 700 years before Christ, the Assyrians, with their powerful army and advanced siege weapons, began conquering the Phoenician coastal cities one by one. Tyre, the greatest of all Phoenician cities, resisted fiercely but eventually fell. Later, the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar would deliver another devastating blow, laying siege to Tyre for 13 long years. Picture this dramatic moment. As Phoenician cities burned and their great trading ships were destroyed, something remarkable was happening. Their alphabet, their greatest creation, was already spreading far beyond their borders, taking on a life of its own. It was like a parent watching their child grow up and succeed independently. One of history's greatest ironies is that as the Phoenicians declined, their alphabet thrived more than ever. The Greeks had already adapted it and were using it to write what would become some of the most influential texts in human history. The works of Homer, Plato, and Aristotle. The alphabet had become like a cultural phoenix, rising from the ashes of its creator's civilization to soar to new heights. The surviving Phoenicians found refuge in their colonies, particularly in Carthage, which would carry on their legacy for several more centuries. But even Carthage would eventually fall to Rome in one of history's most dramatic conflicts. The Romans razed the city to the ground and, according to legend, sowed the earth with salt so nothing would grow there again. Yet here's the fascinating part. While the Romans destroyed the last major Phoenician city, they were daily using an alphabet that was the grandchild of the Phoenician system. The very orders to destroy Carthage were probably written using letters that evolved from Phoenician symbols. The Phoenician language eventually faded away, spoken by fewer and fewer people until it disappeared entirely. But their revolutionary idea that writing could be simple, adaptable, and accessible to everyone never died. Their alphabet became like a universal language donor, giving birth to countless writing systems across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Today, nearly every alphabet in the world can trace its ancestry back to those innovative Phoenician traders. Hebrew, Arabic, Latin, Cyrillic, and many other writing systems all descended from their 22 simple letters. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes a civilization's most lasting impact isn't in its buildings, its armies, or its wealth, but in its ideas. The Phoenicians may have lost their cities, their ships, and their trading empire, but they gave the world something far more valuable, a way to preserve and share knowledge that would outlast any empire. Their greatest invention proved mightier than any army, more enduring than any city wall, and more influential than any trade route. In the end, the pen truly proved mightier than the sword. As we reach the end of our journey through this remarkable story, let's reflect on what the Phoenician alphabet truly means for humanity. This wasn't just a clever solution for busy merchants to keep track of their trades. It was nothing less than a revolution that changed the course of human history. Think about it. Before the Phoenicians, writing was a privilege reserved for the elite, priests, scribes, and rulers who spent decades mastering thousands of complex symbols. But these innovative traders broke down those barriers. With just 22 simple letters, they created a key that could unlock the power of written communication for everyone. The Phoenician alphabet was like a spark that ignited a fire of knowledge and creativity across the ancient world. It traveled from shore to shore, adapted by Greeks, embraced by Romans, and eventually evolved into dozens of writing systems we use today. Without this brilliant invention, we might still be struggling with complex hieroglyphs or cuneiform tablets. Imagine how different our world would be without this gift from the Phoenicians. Would Shakespeare have written his plays? Would scientists have easily shared their discoveries? Would you be able to send that quick text message to your friend? The alphabet made all of this possible. So the next time you write something, whether it's a message, a story, or even just your name, remember those ancient traders who dared to simplify writing. In those simple marks you make on paper or screen, you're carrying forward a legacy that spans more than 3,000 years. And speaking of legacies, if you've enjoyed this journey through ancient history, we invite you to become part of our own Legacy of Empires community. Hit that like button if you've learned something new today, share this video with someone who loves history, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories from the ancient world. Next week, we'll explore another amazing civilization that shaped our world. Will it be the mysterious Egyptians, the mighty Persians, or perhaps the ingenious Greeks? Subscribe now so you don't miss out. This is Legacy of Empires, where the past comes alive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making history.